Final week in the regular season here in 2024. That's hard to believe, isn't it? John Schaefer with you. This is the wrap-up show, kind of a preview edition. Figured it's been a handful of days because the Aztecs have had a bye week, and I probably won't do a wrap-up show tomorrow night because with the 8 o'clock start, by the time I'm off the radio post-game, the radio wrap-up, which is kind of confusing. I don't know why I named this the wrap-up show, considering I do a radio show. It's also called the wrap-up show, but by the time I'm off the air, it's probably going to be 11 o'clock, and it's probably not ideal to do a show from like 11 to midnight from the studio, although depending on the result, we'll see. I'm not ruling it out, so it's at least a possibility. But I can't believe it's the final week of the regular season. I cannot believe it's March. This is the best time of the year. And I'm here to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about tonight. So if you have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat. I'll try to get to as many as I can here this evening. Whether you're here live or on replay, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, I really do appreciate it. I have year-round content for Aztec football and men's basketball fans. In addition to that, if you're a Mountain West fan, no matter what team you're rooting for, I appreciate the follow because we talk a lot of Mountain West sports, obviously football and basketball primarily, but whatever it is, we're talking about it here on the wrap-up show presented by my friend Eric Lanier at Higher Impact Financial. So as you make your way in, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, smashing the like button, following me on Twitter at John Schaefer. That is JONSCHAEFFER at John Schaefer. And also appreciate the super chats. Great way to support my work. You can click the $ below the chat box. If you want to become a member, you can click the join button down below. Okay, let's start obviously with tomorrow for San Diego State, because this begins a stretch where basically you've got a scenario where San Diego State could still win an outright league title in 2024. They could get a share of the title, or they could still play on Wednesday on day one of the Mountain West tournament and not even get a bye. So that's all within the realm of possibility for the Aztecs. Anywhere from the 1 seed to the 6 seed remains at least a possibility for San Diego State. Now, it's much more likely for the Aztecs to be 2, 3, 4, 5 than it would be 1 or 6. Why? The Aztecs do not own the tiebreaker with Utah State. So even if the Aztecs benefit from a Utah State loss, Aztecs, even with 2 wins and Utah State closing 1-1, Utah State would have the tiebreaker in terms of the seeding for the Mountain West tournament. You would take the co-championship because technically it would be a regular season championship. So that's what I think most Aztec fans are rooting for, a Utah State loss coupled with 2 San Diego State wins. So again, that's why 1 is more unlikely than the other scenarios, the 1 seed. And then I think the 6 seed is more unlikely than the other scenarios, although again, not outside the realm of possibility. But if the Aztecs win one of their final 2 games, I think I have this right. Although I haven't confirmed it, so I may not have this right. I thought that if the Aztecs win one of their final 2, they would avoid the 6 seed. Someone's going to have to confirm that for me. So I'm not sure if that's the case or not. So you've got that, again, you've got everything as a possibility for San Diego State from that 1 seed to the 6 seed. In addition to that, you just have so much still up in the air. I mean, for the Aztecs, obviously, you're thinking about much more than just the Mountain West Conference tournament. You're thinking about more than a regular season title. You're thinking about NCAA tournament seeding possibilities as well. The last we saw from the committee, the selection committee, San Diego State was a 4 seed. That was a couple of weeks ago, and they did that mock selection from the actual committee, and the Aztecs were a 4 seed. Now, how much has changed since then? You could argue. Some people would tell you San Diego State's probably still on that 4 line, maybe is the 15th or 16th overall team. Others would tell you maybe the Aztecs have been passed by teams behind them that have had some marquee wins over the last 10 or 15 days. The Aztecs have not taken on any bad loss all year. They're one of, I think, a handful of teams in the nation that does not have a loss outside of Quad 1. A couple of those are like Purdue and UConn, I want to say. But San Diego State's like one of 4 or 5 teams without a loss outside of Quad 1. But with that being said, since that mock selection by the committee, the Aztecs are probably seeking a marquee win. They do have 1 loss since that selection. That was at Utah State, I want to say. So do they need additional wins to remain on the 4 line? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you could probably say that the Aztecs will need to win each of the last 2 regular season games to feel good about being on that 4 line come Selection Sunday. And they might have to win those 2 games and potentially win a game or more in the Mountain West tournament next week at the Thomas and Mack. So that's why tomorrow's critical, obviously against UNLV. It's such an interesting game tomorrow because the Aztecs have already beaten Vegas, but it feels like forever ago when the 2 teams met. You'd have to go back to, let's see, it was It was January. It was January 6th, a nationally televised game. Um, San Diego State really raced out to a large lead and kind of kept UNLV at arm's reach for most of the game and won it 72-61. But January 6th was 2 months ago, you know, essentially 2 months ago. And UNLV, I couldn't believe this when I heard it at some point over the weekend. UNLV has won 9 of 10 in the Mountain West for the first time in school history. I mean, isn't that amazing? UNLV has won 9 of 10 in the Mountain West for the first time in school history. Now, again, their heyday was outside of the Mountain West, obviously in the Big West, but that's still incredible in the history of the league. And they've had good teams. It's been a while, but they've had some good teams in the league, but they're rolling. And you think about some of their losses this year, and they're confounding and confusing and heartbreaking. I mean, a 5-point play against Utah State, blew a large lead against Nevada at home, where I think Nevada closed on a 10-0 run to win by 1 or 2 just a couple of weeks ago. So they've had some really disappointing endings to some of their games. Otherwise, right now, not only are they potentially tied for first place in the Mountain West, they might be in sole possession of first place in the Mountain West if they just avoided some quote unquote bad luck. But here they are. UNLV has already clinched a first round bye, so they'll avoid playing on Wednesday and they'll play in the quarters. They have not played in the semis since, I think someone said, was it 2013 or 2014? It's been something like a decade. And it's just a big game because the winner of this game is a leg up in the conference standings. If San Diego State does not win in Vegas on Tuesday, again, it's still a possibility the Aztecs could remain, or excuse me, could finish as low as the number 6 seed in the Mountain West tournament. So it's just a critical game. And again, UNLV is playing really good basketball. Their freshman point guard, Deon Thomas, has had a very good season. He only continues to improve. They've gone bigger as the season has gone on. They got a 2-time transfer active at the end of December. They beat Creighton that day, but they're big and physical, and they really rebound well, and they play with a bigger lineup, and they want to out-rebound you, and they want to out-physical you, and they want to kind of do a lot of the things that San Diego State traditionally has done over the years, and they've circled this game, obviously. I mean, when you win 9 of 10, and you know that the next step in your progression, I think if you're UNLV, is to find a way to beat a team like San Diego State. You know, it's one thing to beat others around the league, but anyone that follows this series or follows San Diego State basketball understands how good the Aztecs have been against UNLV in recent history. And when I say recent history, you're talking about really the last 15 plus years. I think the Aztecs, regardless of location, are 21-2 in their last 23 games against UNLV. So that doesn't guarantee anything for tomorrow, but you know the Aztecs like playing in that building. You know they've had a ton of success. In fact, no Division I team has more wins inside the Thomas and Mack. That is, you know, the Aztecs have more wins at the Thomas and Mack than any team in the nation in a building that isn't its home building. Okay. So San Diego State has 45 wins at the Thomas and Max in 2008, the 08-09 season, 27 neutral, 18 road wins against UNLV since 2008-9. Villanova is the second most wins among non-home teams in a building, and that's at MSG with 36. So, I mean, it's been a home away from home. Will that continue? We'll find out. Is there a possibility where these two teams meet again next week? Yeah, I mean, they might meet. Well, they will meet obviously tomorrow at 8 p.m. and then they could meet this upcoming week at the Thomas and Mack, or excuse me, next week at the Thomas and Mack Center in the Mountain West tournament. So a lot is on the line. Kicks off a big week. Not only is it UNLV on Tuesday, it's Boise State Friday, senior night. Boise is playing incredible basketball right now. I think they've won 5 straight, which is the longest winning streak of any Mountain West team in the conference here in 2024. They have momentum. They're playing well at both ends. I think they have Nevada tomorrow night for their senior night at home. And then if they get through that with a win, and it won't be easy because Nevada's played good basketball here recently, but Boise State's going to be favored. And if Boise State wins that game, they're coming to Viejas with a 6-game winning streak on Friday night, senior night at Viejas Arena. And again, from the Aztecs perspective, I think if you get both of these games, again, easier said than done, you're in a position where you should feel at least, I don't know what the right word would be, if it's good or decent. I think you'd feel decently good to hedge about a chance of securing a top 4 seed. And if you win one of the two, you know, from a resume perspective, you still have a very strong resume, but could it push you off that 4 line to the 5 seed line? Yeah, that's absolutely a possibility for the NCAA tournament. Also going 1-1 means that the Aztecs will not have a shot to win a regular season championship in the Mountain West here in 2024. But again, this won't be easy. A game that's essentially a coin flip, I would say, tomorrow night from a Vegas perspective, where San Diego State's going to be something like a 1 or 2 point favorite, and then coming home for Boise State. And depending on what Boise does Tuesday, depending on what the Aztecs do on Tuesday, who knows what San Diego State is going to be in that game, maybe a small favorite against a Boise State team that's really playing good basketball right now. So, there's a lot on the line, obviously, over these next 2 weeks. You're 13 days away from Selection Sunday. I think the league is in good shape, but not perfect shape in terms of getting a large number of teams into the NCAA tournament. I think you probably are approaching a spot where you've got 3 or 4 locks or near locks, and you might by the end of the week be more like 5. But I think New Mexico is the one team among the top 6. And of course, UNLV could still win the league potentially as well through the Mountain West Conference tournament on its home floor. But I think among the 6 teams, the team with the shakiest resume or on shakiest footing right now has to be New Mexico from an at-large perspective. Ever since losing a couple of weeks ago to Air Force at home, that really changed the trajectory of their season. And if I'm New Mexico or a fan of the Lobos, I wouldn't feel good about the prospects of getting in without another marquee road win and potentially. I think if they get the marquee road win at Utah State, they're in good shape. But that's easier said than done. Logan on senior day, where Utah State's playing for a share or more of a conference title, will not be easy in any regard. And I'm sure Utah State's going to be a somewhat sizable favorite in that game. I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 points potentially. In a game like that, if you don't get that, you're going to need multiple wins on a neutral floor, you would think. If you're New Mexico, you might need multiple good wins on a neutral floor next week in Vegas. So I think New Mexico has real work to do. I think they could absolutely be passed by teams behind them, especially in power leagues. But the other 5, San Diego State, obviously, Utah State, Boise State, Colorado State, Nevada, I think are probably feeling pretty good. Not perfect. I don't know if they're putting their head on the pillow at night and saying we're 1000% definitively in. I think San Diego State, after seeing themselves in the 4 line, probably feels that way. But the other 4 programs are probably closer to feeling that way, would be my guess here tonight. But New Mexico's got work to do, and they're not doing work by beating Fresno State at home later this week. That's not going to bolster their resume. They have to beat Utah State on the road. And if they don't do that, they're going to have to win good games on neutral floors against teams like Boise State or San Diego State or Utah State, et cetera, to feel good about their at-large candidacy. Of course, they could win the Mountain West tournament, but easier said than done. Whoever does it will have won either, whether it's 3 games in 3 days. Nobody's ever won 4 games in 4 days, and New Mexico might have to do that if they can't win each of their next 2 games here over the course of this final week in the regular season. But I think you're looking at, again, a league that's going to get 5 teams into the NCAA tournament with a shot to get 6. It is far from a guarantee that they get 6. There's no path for 7, in my opinion, because even if New Mexico closes with a win at Utah State, but if UNLV then somehow runs through the Mountain West tournament and wins it, that's going to knock someone out, I would think. I'd be shocked to see the Mountain West with 7 teams in the NCAA tournament. But 6 is still a possibility. I think New Mexico, if they close well, if New Mexico wins the Mountain West tournament, if UNLV wins the Mountain West tournament, I think 6 is a possibility. If I was, a betting man, which I'm really not, I would say the odds-on favorite is 5 Mountain West teams in the NCAA tournament, followed by 6. And then less likely than 6, in my opinion, would be 4, and the least likeliest of all scenarios would be 7. And I don't see a path where there's less than 4 teams in the NCAA tournament for the Mountain West. Of course, they've had 4 plus each of the last 3 years, if you include this year. They had 4 in 2022. They had 4 in 2023 when the Aztecs made their run, and they'll have, I think, 5 plus. I think 5 ultimately will be the number for the Mountain West here in 2024. But again, I'll get to some of your comments here tonight. If you have any for me, we're looking ahead to tomorrow night at the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas. Late start, 8 p.m., and a critical game for both San Diego State and UNLV. I'm sure UNLV is out to prove to a lot of people that they belong, right? Because they've won 9 of 10, but none of those wins are against San Diego State. And from the Aztec perspective, they've had a week off to get ready for this. And you think about what's to come for the Aztecs. You've got Tuesday, Friday. If they win 1 plus of these last 2 games, they're likely not playing again until Thursday of next week in the quarterfinal round. So they have another 6 days. So chances to get healthier, work on themselves, and work on things that are necessary, not just for the Mountain West tournament, but also for the NCAA tournament. And again, we're less than 2 weeks away, hard to believe, from Selection Sunday. And we are just over a week away from the start of the Mountain West tournament, which will be next Wednesday in Vegas. And the Aztecs, interestingly, are in Vegas back-to-back weeks here because, again, they're playing Tuesday night against UNLV, and again next week in some form or fashion in that Mountain West conference tournament. So again, if you are here, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, I've got year-round content for you. Smash the like button for me. Follow me on Twitter at John Schaefer. And thank you for the super chats. I see the super chats coming in. I'm going to get to every single super chat. I interact with all of them. It's a great way to support the channel and my work. Just click the $ below the chat box and let's start there. And thank you, Kevin. This is a good jumping off point here tonight. And I apologize if I'm all over the place. I woke up early, traveled back from Sedona, was off on Friday, was with my family with the Aztecs off this past weekend. So everything's a little bit of a blur right now. It's been a bit of a long day, but I wanted to do this because I don't know if I'll be able to do it tomorrow night or not. Kevin, thank you, man, for the super chat. He says, Ledee is the clear Mountain West player of the year. Changed my mind. Well, you know me, I'm not going to do that. I do think ultimately he will get it. I think, where was it? Was it in, I think CBS Sports, Gary Parrish had him as the 5th All-American or one of the 5 first-team All-Americans from this past weekend. I read that. I think he's either going to be 5th among the first-team All-Americans and slide in there, deservedly so if you've watched him play all year like we have, or he's going to be a second-team All-American. That's how I look at it. So he's either he's somewhere in that neighborhood of like the 4th to 10th best player in America, which puts him in the driver's seat for the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year, in my opinion. Now, the Aztecs might not win a regular season title. They might not share it. They might not win it outright. They may not finish in second place. So does that muddy it a little bit when you have, players like Darius Brown II and Great Osibor and Tyson Degenhart and, whomever else, Isaiah Stevens, they've really fallen back. I don't see it being Stevens with Colorado State, I think 9-8 right now in the Mountain West. Obviously, Nevada's got a couple of really good players, Blackshear and Lucas. And I'm missing someone that we've been talking about, of course, here that's going to be heading for the NCAA tournament as well. But, whether it's the Houses, but I think it's Ledee. It may be a close vote. If they were regular season champions, San Diego State, it would be easier. It would be more definitive, I would say. But if the Aztecs again finish 2nd, 3rd, 4th, even 5th place, I still think ultimately he's going to win it. He's been a dominant force all season long. No teams have had consistent answers for him, even when he's been double teamed throughout the course of the year. So I think he wins it. But again, not clear cut, I wouldn't say as of yet. I think with 2 more wins, it becomes more clear cut. With 2 more impressive performances, which he's done all year long. I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine him not having good games against both UNLV and Boise State this week. But yeah, I think he's the front runner. I don't think it's a complete slam dunk as of yet. Like if the Aztecs didn't win these last 2 games or he didn't play the way he's played for the better part of the last 30 games. But I think by and large, he's got the inside track to the Mountain West Player of the Year. And I think he's, deserving of it because I truly believe he's one of the top handful of players in the country. Watching him this year and what he's been able to do so consistently. I mean, he beat you in so many different ways. And we see that as Aztec fans. So, yeah, I think ultimately he will be the Mountain West Player of the Year. But cross your fingers if you're a San Diego State fan. Jerry, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your super chat and your support. He says, keep up the great work, John. Thank you, Jerry. I really do appreciate that. As you know, I do this for, Aztec fans and fans of Mountain West sports and, Mountain West hoops and Mountain West football. And it is a passion project. And I do it late at night. And I do it early in the morning. And I do it on weekends. And I do it as often as I possibly can. One-man band sitting at the kitchen table with my 4-year-old asleep downstairs. My wife watching, who knows, The Bachelor probably right now upstairs. So I appreciate you saying that, Jerry. It really means a lot. And thank you guys for hanging out, whether you're here live or on replay. Mason, thank you, man, for the super chat. He says, John, can we hear your ideal starting 5? I kind of like what they've been doing here recently, right? Does anyone have an issue with what they've been doing here recently? Jay Powell has been inserted into the starting lineup. I think you could certainly make an argument for Reese Waters to be in the starting lineup as well. Obviously, Lamont and Darion started so many big games they've started so many big games for this program over the years, specifically Lamont, obviously Darion coming in last year. Of course, Jaden is going to start. And, Micah has made big plays for this program a lot in his 2-year time as an Aztec. I mean, he just has. So you got to trust in the fact that, I think I had, was it Dutch on his coach's show Thursday night on San Diego Sports 760? I played some of the audio back actually today on John and Jim. And he said, for us to make that deep run, we're going to need better 3-point shooting. And I'm sure Aztec fans would agree with that. But he says, as Ledee draws the attention and when he kicks it out, we're going to need someone to knock down a couple of threes in a game. Whether it's, you can list off all kinds of players, whether it's Micah, Lamont, Darion, Reese, Miles, Elijah, Jay Powell, right? They're all capable 3-point shooters. Like everyone I just mentioned is a capable 3-point shooter. Shoot, Jaden is shooting 40% from beyond the arc this year, I think. 41.2%. I think he's 14 of 34. They've had stretches, and Dutch talked about this, where they, have hit 45% over like a 2 or 3 game stretch, and then they've had other stretches where they've hit 20% over a 2 or 3 game stretch. Obviously, to make a run. I mean, to get to like an Elite Eight, even a Sweet 16. I don't think you're getting to a Sweet 16, and we can have this conversation here tonight. But are you getting to a Sweet 16 shooting sub 30% in back-to-back games from 3? Probably not. Could you survive a game because of your defense and because of Ladie and what you can do inside? Yeah. Yeah. Could you win a game going 6 of 20 from beyond the arc? Well, that's actually 30%. But could you win a game going 5 of 20 from beyond the arc? Yeah, probably. Can you win a second against like a 4 or 5 seed on a neutral floor? Shooting 5 of 20 when another team is capable of, hitting 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's where it becomes a numbers game. When you're not having success from beyond the arc, even if you're not attempting a ton, but if you're shooting 20% and you're making 4 or 5, and someone else is shooting at a better clip and making 7, 8, like that difference from 5 made to 8 made is a 9-point swing. That's a lot to overcome. Can you overcome it? Yeah. Turnovers, free throws, overall shooting percentage, rebounding margin, right? Of course it can be overcome, but it becomes a challenge. And, a year ago, the Aztecs had some timely shots. Did they not? In the NCAA tournament? They just had, thinking about Darion, personal 8-0 run, hitting a 3 or 2 against Alabama. I know Mike had a couple of critical threes last year in the tournament, including against Charleston, I want to say. So, you had players make plays from beyond the arc a year ago. I mean, how else do you get to a national championship game? I don't have the numbers in front of me. Maybe someone can put it in the chat. I don't know if the Aztecs shot as a team from beyond the arc last year in the NCAA tournament. We can find it out. But again, do they need to be better than they've been here in Mountain West play from beyond the arc to make a run? Yeah, you can make that argument, but it's not like they don't have the cast of characters that are capable, right? I mean, would anyone be surprised if in the first NCAA tournament game, Darion Trammell hit 2 threes? Or Lamont, or Reese, or Micah, or Elijah? I don't think anyone would be surprised if they hit 2 threes. That's the thing. You don't need anyone to hit 5, right? You don't need, you don't have Adam Seiko on this team. You don't have a 50% 3-point shooter. So, but that's really not what you're necessarily banking on either. Like, you don't need someone hitting 5. You need someone hitting a couple, and then a couple of other players hitting 1. And all of a sudden you look up, you've hit 6 or 7. But there's a difference between making 4 and making 7, and it can be the difference between winning and losing. So I think it's an interesting point. Again, Ladie's going to get his, and Ladie's going to draw attention. If he continues to draw attention, if others can make opponents pay, San Diego State's going to be in really good shape. But if they struggle with that shot from beyond the arc, it's a one-and-done tournament. We understand how it works. So anyway, long way, Mason, of not necessarily answering your question, but thanks for the super chat. All right, let me go to the top of the chat and see. I'll try to get to, as many as I can here over the next, let's say, 30 minutes or so. It's funny when you get people in the chat that kind of want to troll, which is fine. Let's see here. I really have no idea if this is actually BJ. I'm assuming it's actually not. Let's see here. Larry Joe, thank you. He says, I'm kind of nervous for tomorrow. Can't afford a slow start tomorrow. Last time the Aztecs played with a week off, they were on the road to Colorado State. And we all remember that brutal start. Yeah, I think it's different. I think it's a good point, Larry Joe, and thank you for hanging out tonight. Here's the difference for me between that first bye week and this bye week, and Dutch talked about this Thursday, is that the first bye week, they weren't healthy. Specifically, Jaden. I think he had a food poisoning situation. He may have been sick, and he didn't practice for like 3-4 days. Like he was, and that's so unlike Jaden, because here's someone that's on the floor day in and day out, even if the team isn't practicing. So it was kind of a bit of a lost week from that perspective for Jaden. And there was at least one other injury, if not 2, that the Aztecs were dealing with that week. I think there were a couple, because I remember going to practice one day that week, and there were a couple of guys out. And you're thinking, oh, man, this isn't a good time for that, but it kind of is an okay time for it because they had the week off. But you're right. They got off to that slow start against Colorado State. Now, I would say this, that, yeah, they lost that game, but despite that start, and what was it, 17-3, 17-4? Same thing happened here against Colorado State. Aztecs came all the way back in that game to take a lead. So yeah, not an ideal start, not the perfect way to draw it up, but I don't I don't forecast it, you know? I mean, again, we cover it from a San Diego State perspective. We've seen them trail in, maybe 6 or 7 of their last 8 or 9 games, about 5 minutes into the game. That has been a little bit surprising, but it's not like they've been trailing every game by 10 or 13 points. It's going to be a different environment. Sea level, not sold out. UNLV is playing really well, but they're not drawing huge numbers. I talked to Mike Grimala, who covers UNLV today, for it's the Sun in Vegas, and he said they haven't drawn at all, even with them winning. So maybe the crowd's a little better because San Diego State's in town, and I'm sure there'll be a number of Aztec fans. But you got to create a little bit of your own energy, and there's that, and it's both teams just needing it from like a regular season perspective and from a Mountain West tournament seeding perspective, and for the Aztecs, like from a seeding in the NCAA tournament perspective, teams just need it. So I don't think the Aztecs will be flat. I think they understand that like the end is near, and it's March, and San Diego State typically plays really good basketball in February and March under Brian Dutcher and or Steve Fisher previously, and we'll see if that continues tomorrow night or not. Now, if the Aztecs don't win tomorrow, we'll have to see how it plays out. But again, this is going to be like a 1 or 2 point spread. That's what it's going to be. San Diego State, I think, at last check, is favored by 1.5, and UNLV has been excellent here over the last month plus. I know they have some shocking losses. Air Force at home by 32. None of it makes any sense. Who else did they lose to earlier in the non-conference? Southern. They're different than the team they were in November. They got, again, one of the Boone brothers active in December, and they've just become a completely different team. They're big, they're physical, they're strong. Their point guard is really impressive in Thomas, and there's just a better team today than they were 4 months ago. And I think you could say the same thing, truthfully, about San Diego State as well. Let's see here. All day Ed says, love our chances not going to line. I don't know if Ed's talking about the NCAA tournament or the Mountain West tournament or tomorrow night in Las Vegas. And I'm expecting a good game tomorrow night. I think the way UNLV has played, and considering they understand that kind of the eyes are, they have a chance to pop up onto like the national radar, right? If you beat San Diego State at home, a top 25 team, a team that's beaten you 21 of the last 23 times, the two teams have squared off, like they can get some people's attention. And I think that if they beat San Diego State tomorrow, all of a sudden they are a legitimate contender to win the Mountain West Tournament Championship. I think if they don't win that game, people will probably say similar things that, oh, here's UNLV again. They can't beat San Diego State. They have no success in the Mountain West Tournament. They're not a legit contender, even though it's possible. But I think a lot's on the line for them, just like I think a lot's on the line for San Diego State as well. Let's see here. Let's see here, guys. Dustin says that's correct. Win one at San Diego State is a 5 seed or better in the Mountain West tournament. Thank you, Dustin. Yeah, that's important. I mean, how important? Like, extremely important. There are a couple of reasons. Let's talk about that for a second. If the Aztecs lock down a top 5 seed, they'd have to win 3 games in 3 days, which is something they've routinely done, or certainly played 3 games in 3 days in Vegas under Brian Dutcher. He's been in 6 consecutive Mountain West Championship games since taking over as head coach for Steve Fisher. That's amazing. So trying to make it 7 for 7. Doing it out of the opening round where you're a 6 seed or worse is almost unheard of. No team in the history of the Mountain West Conference tournament has won 4 games in 4 days. Not to mention the fact that if you're heading for the NCAA tournament, do you even want to play around with that? Do you even want the concept of the Aztecs playing 4 games in 4 days in front of the NCAA tournament? Like, imagine the toll that that'll take physically on a team to play 4 games, not just 3, but 4 games potentially in 4 days. Like, that's as big of a challenge as you could ask for. So it is critically important to get one of these final 2 games for a number of reasons, including the one Dustin just illustrated. By the way, you don't have to necessarily win one of the 2 to finish as a top 5 seed in the Mountain West tournament, but you got to win one of the 2 to feel good about your NCAA tournament seeding and not slip back a seed line or 2. So it's tricky. It's confusing. At the end of the day, just win. And if San Diego State does that, things will take care of themselves, is what I would say, of themselves. Doug says, anyone been nursing injuries we haven't heard much about? I'm thinking Parrish. Heard he had a lingering calf His three-point shot has been really inconsistent. I think he's had nagging injuries over the course of the year, and Dutch has harped on that. I think at times, Parrish, I'm just looking at it right now because I have the year-long stats in front of me. Parrish in Mountain West play this year, shooting 26.1% from beyond the arc, and for the year is at 31.4%. I want to say he was over 40% about a handful of games into the year. So his shot hasn't been what it was to start the year, and I think some of that might be because of the toll that a season potentially has taken on his body. You're never going to hear him complain. I mean, that's just not who he is, and he plays hard at both ends. He's a really good defender. He's a really capable offensive player, obviously. I mean, we've seen it over parts of the last 2 years. So my guess, Doug, without fully knowing the extent of anything regarding injuries, is that everyone is not fully 100%, but you would think the week off gets you closer to it. But these are things that, present themselves over the course of the year. And what do you make of, those injuries? And how do you overcome some of those circumstances that present themselves? But, just knowing how they operate, knowing how Micah Parrish is as a player, how hard-nosed he is, you're never going to hear him complain about anything, right? He's not taking himself out of games. So hopefully the week off is beneficial, not just for Parrish, but really for the team, truthfully. Larry Joe again, St. John, trying not to look ahead beyond tomorrow, but I'll be at the Boise State game Friday. In addition to the pregame show, but will you be doing the John and Jim show live from VA House? I will. We'll be doing John and Jim beginning at 3 p.m. It'll just be me, though, because Jim is on his bachelor party actually in Vegas. This upcoming weekend, it'll be me and Ben Fletcher from 3 to 7. I think I'll actually be inside for the final 20 or so minutes of the pregame show because I want to be inside for the senior night festivities. So we'll carry those for you on San Diego Sports 760. But yes, please say hi. Always appreciate it when Aztec fans come up and say hello. So please do that on Friday night. It's gonna be a great one. Another, phenomenal senior class, as accomplished maybe as any senior class in the history of the program, with NCAA tournament appearances and deep runs and hold on, I'm just looking at a text that just came in. All right, let's see here. Gustavo, thanks for hanging out, man. He says, if we want to beat UNLV, we need a good start and finish the game. We haven't closed the games against the top Mountain West teams this season. I'm trying to think about games that the Aztecs have won at home. I mean, your point is interesting because I want to say that the Aztecs have won every game at home by double digits but the UC Irvine game. So they haven't been tested a lot in close games at home. On the road, they have played a lot of close games. Nevada, overtime, Boise led by 6 or 7 late, but Aztecs closed on that run and made it a 1-point game in the end. I'm forgetting some games. Colorado State, Aztecs came back to take a lead. Right. I mean, basically every game has been quote unquote winnable other than New Mexico on the road. Is that a fair assessment? Like the games, again, I'm not saying they were winnable in the final possession, but with 4 minutes to play in regulation, I would say they're winnable or they have been winnable. So, yeah, I think it's a fair point. I mean, you'd love to beat a good team and do so by making plays down the stretch, which is something the Aztecs traditionally do. Like they win close games traditionally, right? Saw that a year ago. I think we've seen it at times this year in the non-conference, right? We've seen that against Washington in overtime, Cal in overtime. I'm missing some stuff, guys. This season is so long, but there's been some overtime games, some UCSD ending, right? I mean, they've closed some games out, and they've won some games that were complete coin flips that were easily losable. Now, have they done that in conference against a really good team? I think it's a fair point. We'll see if they potentially are able to earn one of those against UNLV or Boise over the next week. I think that's at least a possibility. Let's see here. Yes, this is Larry Joe, the text into the Darren Smith Show. Absolutely. Let's see here. Just trying to catch up here in the chat. SD Sports Feed saying worst 3-point shooting team since 2017. You're saying worst percentage shooting team for the Aztecs since 2017? I don't have those numbers in front of me. And I don't even know what they're shooting as a team. But the amazing thing about it all, like to that point, Fiend, is that quote unquote, despite that, they've overcome it. I mean, it hasn't been some, kryptonite. It hasn't done in the Aztecs to this point. I mean, they still haven't suffered a quote unquote bad loss all year, and it's March. By the way, UNLV, should the Aztecs lose this game, tomorrow would be a quad two loss, but there's a chance to be quad one because they're right outside quad one. Top 75 on the road is quad one. And I want to say UNLV, as of today or yesterday, was 82nd. I think they pick up a big win. They probably move up a handful of spots and they're right on the cusp of being, quad one on their home floor. But again, like when I think about the losses the Aztecs have suffered this year, yeah, I mean, listen, they've struggled to shoot from beyond the arc in some of those losses. There's no question about it. But it doesn't seem like that has been the answer. Like, hey, double the D, make them shoot from the outside, and that's how they're beatable. Like, if that's been the case, we've seen good teams beat the Aztecs at home this year. Like, the only formula to beat San Diego State has been beat the Aztecs in front of a raucous environment at home, by and large. And while that can be concerning, the truth is the Aztecs aren't going to face something like that in the NCAA tournament in all likelihood. I guess it's possible. Like you could be in Spokane playing Washington State, and like, is that going to be a Washington State building? I guess. Or you could be in Salt Lake City playing BYU. Like something like that would be concerning in a second round. But it's not. Again, you think about some of these road losses. You're playing in hostile environments: BYU, Grand Canyon, the Pit, Boise, Utah State. Like that's like all their losses, right? Like I just basically summarized every loss, barring like Nevada, sellout crowd as well. So, we'll see what plays out. On neutral floors, the Aztecs have been very good. Road neutral, they're still good. They're over 500 road neutral this year, San Diego State. I think that gets lost sometimes on people. So let's see what plays out here in Vegas tomorrow. And then let's see what plays out over the next week. And then we'll make our opinions based on, when we see the bracket come selection Sunday. But again, I don't think it's like you beat San Diego State by forcing them to take a lot of threes. I mean, that might be a formula, but I don't know if that formula has necessarily worked. Again, San Diego State has lost on the road to really good teams. That's a credit to the other teams. And yeah, the Aztecs haven't shot it well in some of their losses, but they're not the only team in the nation that hasn't shot it well in their losses. That's basically how college basketball works, right? Larry Joe again says, John, I agree with D is the player of the year, though I do remember a few years back when Dutch said that he believes that the player of the year should go to a player on the team that is the conference champion. Yeah, I think he said it before, like if it's tough to differentiate, like he would go to the best player on the best team. And listen, this league has great players and great teams. It's not just Jaden Ledee. It's not just San Diego State. I mean, let's be fair and let's be clear. There are great players in this league right now. Dagenhart, Brown, Asabar, it goes on and on and on, right? Lucas, Blackshear, as we talked about earlier, Stevens, other players, obviously, in the Aztecs as well. They've had good seasons in addition to Ledee. But I think at the end of the day, if you're going to be unbiased with it, I mean, Ledee's probably been the best player in the league, has he not? And I think it's why he's getting All-American accolades, and other players in the league aren't necessarily getting that at this point. I think Stevens was probably a month ago, but he's probably tailed off a little bit because his team hasn't played really good basketball over the last month or so. So, yeah, I think Ledee's the front runner. I do. Fiend saying 3-point shooting in the tournament was bad last season, but the defense was amazing. I mean, well, I look at the defensive metrics, Fiend, and you do as well, and they're very comparable. Now, there's a difference, and I talked to Dutch about this Thursday night on the show. I said, does it keep you up at night not having the shot blocker like you had a year ago? And he said, yeah, of course. I mean, absolutely. Like he said, we're not that elite shot blocking defensive rebounding team. We got to work for it. And when we do work for it, we can be really, really good. And you look at the metrics, and the Aztecs are, a top 10 caliber defense according to defensive efficiency. But, a year ago, they're going up against 7-footers every single game. Kalkbrenner with Creighton, and Bediako with Alabama, and is it Golden or whatever his name was at FAU, and then Sonogo and Klingon. I mean, it was incredible. But you had one of the premier defensive centers in America in Nathan Mensah. So you don't know what you're going to run into. I mean, you could run into big teams like that. You could run into smaller teams. That wasn't really an issue against Charleston or Furman, but for the Final Four games, the Final Four, not just the the final 4 games, not the final four, the final 4 games that San Diego State played. But yeah, I mean, we know the formula for the Aztecs. They win with defense and rebounding, right? They don't necessarily beat people because they outshoot them, but they do beat people by holding them to 40% shooting and by having really good 3-point field goal percentage defense. And that's why I don't think that it's like a kryptonite situation where it's like, you know what? If they don't hit 1 or 2 more threes, they got no shot. I mean, it's too easy to say something like that, and it's not necessarily accurate. But yeah, you run into a team that shoots or makes 10 or 11, and you're making 4 or 5, and it can be a very long night, obviously. Let's see here, guy. Let me. I'm banning some fake accounts here. Isn't it amazing the people that like troll on YouTube? Like this is like don't you have better things to do with your whatever night this is, Monday night, than like troll a random Mountain West YouTube channel? You would think. LL says, do you think playing elite defense and extorting that much energy affects our 3-point shooting due to a bit of tired legs? I think it's an interesting theory, but the Aztecs have always played elite defense, and other teams have shot the 3 ball better than maybe this team has. So I think maybe there's something with that. I'll tell you something I think has been a factor this year, more so than previous years, is that the Aztecs play a lot on shorter rest than their opponent because of TV. So where other teams play Tuesday, Saturday, the Aztecs play Tuesday, Friday. And then they go Saturday, Tuesday, occasionally. Not all season long, but there have been instances where they go 3 straight games, even 4 straight games on 2 days rest, where they're on shorter rest than their opponent. I think that's a factor. And yes, I think defensive effort can factor into offensive efficiency. I think that's fair. Aztecs have a deep rotation. They'll play 9. So it's not like everyone's playing 40 minutes. Jaden's capable of playing 35 plus minutes, but there are games he's playing 31 or 32 minutes. I think he just had a game where he played 26 minutes. Who was that against? We had 26 minutes and 21 second half points. They all run together. So I think it's an interesting theory, and I think it could be a factor, but I don't think it's the end all be all, would be my guess. Yeah, there was a fake account in here because there was someone acting as if he was BJ, and BJ's a really good reporter and friend of the show, and he comes on with me on San Diego Sports 760, and I don't understand what someone's trying to accomplish. That makes no sense, but all good. The real BJ is always welcome. The imposters, find something better to do with your Monday night. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, they're really big. I mean, thank you, Kevin. I mean, they are absolutely. Like, I was looking at it earlier. I mean, you look at some of these numbers, and especially recently, and they're impressive. I mean, they are a very capable team. Thomas, we've talked about the point guard. Caleb and Keelan Boone are really good. Luis Rodriguez is playing some of the best basketball of his career. Rob Whaley Jr. is a load. Like, this is a very capable team. They're talented. We talked about that 2 months ago. People saying UNLV was the most talented team in the Mountain West. That's what they were saying 2 months ago. The difference is they put it together. They've played together, and they look more like a team. And again, by getting back the transfer that wasn't active, that 2-time transfer was a Keelan. That's been a huge factor for them. And they got a lot of balance. They got 5 players scoring 10 or more points per game. And then you add in like a Rob Whaley, who's a good scorer and rebounder, and you can be in for a long night. But it's a good point. Second chance opportunities, rebounding in general. The Aztecs have to be up for that challenge come tomorrow night. Let's see here. Jerry, what's going on, man? This is John. Went back and watched Gonzaga, and Reese Waters is on fire. If he can catch the fire, I feel he's our X factor for a deep run. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my point, Jerry. Like, this idea that you can write off San Diego State because they've struggled at times from beyond the arc. I'm like, yeah, okay, but I've also seen Reese Waters be as pure of a shooter as there is in the league this year at times, and he's also a guy that's been nicked up occasionally throughout the course of the year. So, yeah, I mean, Reese can hit 3, 4 threes in a game. We've seen that play out, and he can do it very efficiently. He's not a high volume guy. He's not taking 13. So, he can go 3 for 3. That's happened a couple times this year. He can go 2 for 4 or 2 for 3, and that can be the difference. I think Reese has had an amazing first season as an Aztec, truthfully. Not sitting out, transferring in, a team with high expectations, losing the parts that the Aztecs lost. I think he's done it the right way. He's been selfless. Um, I think he's a leader, and I think he's a brilliant scorer, and I think his defense continues to improve. I think he's a brilliant defender. I think he's a great player. I really do, and I think this bench is really important. Whether it's Waters, whether it's Powell, whether it's Parrish, whether it's Saunders, whether it's Bird, whether it's Heidi, I think they've got some interchangeable parts, which is advantageous. I think they've truly developed a nine-man rotation, which also is comparable to what they were doing a year ago. It's different. It's different. It's not the same bench. It's not. I mean, you don't have an All-American coming off your bench in Jaden Ledee. You don't have, an all-time X and O um, glue guy making plays like a Booker Rope coming off your bench. You don't have one of the most brilliant shooters in the history of the program in Adam Seiko. This is different. It's different. You don't have fifth and sixth year players coming off your bench, right? You don't have Micah Parrish, really good three-point shooter coming off your bench. But what you do have is Miles Bird that does a little bit of everything. You've got Reese Waters, who is tremendously capable. You have Elijah Saunders, who's confident. You have Miles Heide, who's only gotten better. So it's hard to complain about the state of the bench right now. It's different than it was a year ago, but it's very hard to complain. I think if the Aztecs can get to a second or third game in Vegas, the Mountain West tournament, advantage San Diego State. There's not a lot of teams playing a true nine-man rotation in the Mountain West. And there's other teams playing 6 or 7. So that could be a difference over a second or third, or for some teams, even a third or fourth day. Fiend says teams are zoning the Aztecs trying to get certain players to shoot threes. San Jose State game was too close because of that. I think a couple of factors played into that because all of a sudden you're at 52-35, and I think it's almost natural to take your foot off the gas. I mean, I think that the players probably think at that point the game's over. And to San Jose State's credit, it wasn't. They made a run. They pulled to within, I think, 4 a couple of times. And if you watch back that game, which is something I've done, I would say that almost every three that San Diego State took was a good look. Now you could say that, the team overall has struggled from distance or certain players have struggled from beyond the arc. But I mean, they took 23s in the game. I think they made 5. I would say 18 of them were like perfect looks, like what you dream of, and 5 went in. So I think you make 1 more, by the way, and all of a sudden you win the game by 11, or you make 2 more and you've won the game by 14 or 15 or whatever the number is. So maybe there's something to that, Fiend. There probably is, but I also don't know if that's the pedigree. Like, hey, let Darion shoot threes, let Reese shoot threes, let Elijah shoot threes. I mean, maybe it can work on any given night, but I don't think that's the formulaically the way. That's not a word to necessarily beat San Diego State. If you're saying, hey, other teams would prefer San Diego State taking jump shots that aren't Jaden Ledee. Yeah, probably true. I mean, Ledee's an All-American, so he's the only All-American on San Diego State. Would they prefer for someone else to beat them? Yeah, of course. I mean, we've known that really since November. But just because they prefer for someone else to beat them doesn't mean A, that someone isn't capable of hitting 2 or 3 threes in the game, and B, Ledee still can't make an impact on a game, even if other players are taking open shots, is what I would say. Let's see here. Gabriel saying New Mexico definitely imposters. I mean, I don't see it like that. I don't think they're imposters. I just think it's hard to make the NCAA tournament from a non-power league, and they haven't completed their season. Unfortunately for their case, they were in good position, but losing to Air Force at home, when other teams are going to have better wins around you and you're on the bubble, is not a good way to get into the NCAA tournament. So they still have chances, but it is far from a foregone conclusion that New Mexico is going to be in the NCAA tournament in 2024. Tomorrow night, Kevin, thank you. He says you have a 97th rated UNLV team in offensive efficiency going against a 9th rated San Diego State team in defensive efficiency. Although I'd want to see it, Kevin, over the last 6 weeks, because there's no way UNLV is 97th in conference play or even over these last 10 games. They're probably like top 40. And San Diego State in the last 9 or 10 games is probably top 15 or better to get all the way up to 9th or whatever it is, maybe top 10 or top 5. So, yeah, you've got an offense that's improving in UNLV against a defense that continues to get better in San Diego State. Let's see here. Try to get to a few more before I get out of here on this Monday night. Eden, thank you, says, hey, John, looking back in the season, doesn't it feel like the New Mexico game on the road was the only game that stood out as a terrible officiating that influenced the outcome? I don't think it influenced the outcome. I think that's hard to say when you lose by 18 points on the road. Do I think it was poorly officiated? Yeah. Do I think if it was perfectly officiated, the game result is different? That's arguable, very arguable. But when you see an 18 or 20 point margin, I think they had it up to 20 or 22 a couple of times late in the second half. I thought it was poorly officiated. Now, I don't think it's the only game that was poorly officiated, by the way. I think there have been a number. But I've thought that each and every year I've been covering San Diego State basketball. That's basketball. And you have to overcome it. And by and large, San Diego State does. And they've lost some heartbreakers on poor officiating. I think back to Matt Bradley, Colorado State, hacked in the final seconds, no call, down one. That's losing a game because of officiating, potentially. I didn't think New Mexico was losing a game because of officiating. Where was that in these comments? Trying to catch up and get to as much as I can. Oh, here we go. Fiends, you tell me. I mean, I don't think San Diego State is going to be fearful of playing anyone on a neutral floor, would be my presumption. That doesn't mean they're not capable of getting beat. Obviously, New Mexico's given the Aztecs good games over the last couple of years. I mean, that's fair. Boise State has played the Aztecs really well over the last 3 seasons, including, when they went 3-0 back in 2022 against the Aztecs. They've certainly had San Diego State's number here recently, and Boise State's playing good basketball. I think any of the other 6 at the top of the league, from UNLV to Colorado State to Nevada, I think they're all capable. But I'd also say San Diego State is capable of beating those other 6 teams when playing its best basketball. So that's why it's so wide open. I can't wait to see what some of the metrics say about percentage chances of teams to win this league once the seeding is fully set, because I think you're going to see are we going to see 7 teams with like a 9% chance of winning the league or better, and nobody with better than like a 20% chance of winning? That's my guess. You're going to see like 5 teams with a 10 to 20% chance, and then like 2 teams with like a 5 to 9% chance, and then 4 teams with no shot. That's my guess. That's what we're going to see in a week or so. And yeah, what's going on, Fiend? Shout out, no doubt. Sons of Montezuma, big supporters, big fans. Fiend says Reese has been our best outside shooter on the road. I think, again, Trammell has shot it well, just from the eye test on the road a few times this year. Jerry saying, yeah, I think Reese Waters could have a Darion Bama type game. I agree with you. I think Darion could have a Darion Bama type game. I think Lamont could have that type of game. I think they're all capable. I would not be surprised if, again, Reese hits 3 threes in the tournament game, Darion, Lamont. I just wouldn't. Jay Powell, Elijah Saunders. I'm just, that's not going to surprise me based on, watching this team all year. I'm not going to say the name, but I agree with you. I think before Reese, got nicked up, he was really shooting well. And we've even seen it since some of the injuries. I mean, we've seen him really electric on offense. And again, I think off the week, I think he's going to hopefully be fully healthy and rested. And I think that's advantage San Diego State. Jeff DeCarcer says, hi, John. Thanks for another great season of wrap-up shows. Also love the Dutcher show. 5 more wins, and we are a 3 seed. Yeah, we can have that conversation real quick. I think that, it's not going to be easy to get to a 3 seed, but I think it's at least something to consider. Let me see real quick. I'm just trying to pull up like a recent bracketology list of 3 seeds, and this will kind of prove my point that, yeah, it sounds good. If the committee said you're a 4 seed a couple of weeks ago, if you win out, can't you move up to like a 3 seed? Now they've already lost once since that committee made those mock selections. They lost to Utah State on the road, but they've won every other game they've played since. Like, for example, right now, obviously you're not getting to the 1 line. The 2 line is Kansas, North Carolina, Marquette, and Arizona. So that's not happening. So all of a sudden it's a very narrow window. You're talking about Creighton, Iowa State, Duke, and Baylor, for example, according to Field of 68 earlier today. Did Baylor win tonight? I want to say yes. Came back to beat Texas is my assumption they did. They won 93-85. I saw they were storming back. So like I don't think it's really easy because there's like no margin. I mean, who are you passing? Passing Creighton, Iowa State, who's been dominant in the Big 12, Duke, who's played like as well as anyone in the country since December 1st. Baylor, I really don't see it. I think, I hope I'm wrong. I hope San Diego State goes 5-0 and gets a 3 seed. I hope I'm wrong, but just watching it play out and understanding that it's going to be hard for some of these teams to drop. Not to mention, San Diego State's not the first number 4 according to the committee in all likelihood right now. Like you got Auburn, Kentucky, Alabama, Illinois. Shoot, Field of 68 has San Diego State right now on the 5 line. I think, yeah, they do. So they've got Auburn, Kentucky, Alabama, and Illinois. My point is this: it's going to be really hard to get to the 3 line. Now, I think if you win these next 2 games, you got a very good argument for a 4 seed. I think you win the next 5 games, you're a lock for a 4 seed. Maybe there's an outside shot of 3, but I think the ceiling might be a 4 if we're being honest about it. Potentially, when you look at the programs you have to pass, and I think the floor. I don't know what the floor is. I mean, is it lower than a 5? It absolutely could be. I think if you don't close well, I think if you lose a couple of games here, maybe you could fall to a 6. So that's what I think you're looking at. Does anyone disagree with that? Probably a 4 or 5 is most likely, with an outside shot at a 6 and an outside shot at a 3. I think most people would probably agree with that. Now, it's a big line of delineation, the 4 and the 5, protected seeds, where you end up. That's probably a topic for another day, as we get into the final couple of days here of the regular season and the postseason before Selection Sunday. Art wants to know if I'll join you for an Aztec Arena at the Thompson Mac next week. Maybe after the game. I'll be there, of course, at the Thompson Mac next week doing my radio show when possible, and of course doing pre, halftime, and post as well. Please hit me up somewhere on social media. Let me know where you are. I'd be happy to join Aztec fans throughout the course of next weekend in Las Vegas. Appreciate you asking. Let's see here. Larry Joe says, I'll say it, John, in response to Fiend's question. I hope we don't run into the Spartans of San Jose State for a 3rd straight game. Man, they play the Aztecs well. They do. They play the Aztecs well. You're right. They do. Offensively, they've played some really good basketball against the Aztecs. Let's see here. And then Fiend saying St. Mary's game and Fresno State on the road were also amazing shooting games. I mean, there have been some times this year where San Diego State has played brilliant 40-minute basketball both ends. And those are 2 examples. They played pretty darn well against Gonzaga as well. And I'm with you on this. We're going to leave on this. We're close on this. He says all about matchups in the tourney. 4 or 5 is perfect and not much of a difference depending on who the 12 and 13 seeds are. I agree with you. And here's what I would say. I think people get a little too caught up with Spokane, Salt Lake. From a fan perspective, I get it. If you want to see the Aztecs in person, you want to. Maybe you live in Southern California. You want to take the quick flight to Salt Lake. Maybe you live in Northern California. You can get to Spokane easily. That I completely get. From a fan viewing perspective in person, I'm with you. I think Spokane, Salt Lake make the most sense. But truth be told, we're only 1 year removed from them going to Orlando and Louisville and winning games because the matchups are critically important. Geography doesn't save you, right? You don't beat geography, you beat teams. And the matchups that the Aztecs had a year ago, regardless of location, were more impactful than the location they were playing the games in. That you have to remember. So I still think there's a decent shot, even if they're not a 4 seed, they end up in Spokane or Salt Lake. But there's also a chance that they get shipped elsewhere. And they're playing games in, I don't even know some of the sites. Brooklyn is one of them, Charlotte, I think, Omaha, Pittsburgh. I'm missing 2 others. So they could be elsewhere. They could be outside of the region. It's absolutely possible. You could argue right now maybe a 5 seed is more likely than a 4 seed unless the Aztecs, close with, 3-4 wins here over the next week or 2. So a 5 seed's a possibility. You look at some bracketology right now. Some people have the Aztecs on the 5 line. Others have them on the 4 line. So I'm less concerned to this, commenter's point. I'm less concerned with the location than I am the actual matchup, whatever that means. I mean, I'm still going to see the matchup and freak out no matter who it is. I think I did that a year ago with Charleston. I'm sure I'll do it with whomever they play this year. But all things equal, the right team in the right geographic location is a perfect combination. But I'd be willing to travel anywhere for the right matchups. Like to go to Orlando knowing that Furman's going to knock off Virginia and you got Charleston and then Furman to get to a Sweet 16, sign me up. I'm down to do it again. If you give me a 12 and a 13 to get to a Sweet 16 in 2024 through Pittsburgh, sign me up. I'm in. Jerry, appreciate you, man. Kevin, appreciate you, man. I'm sorry for being all over the place. A little discombobulated to start the show, by the way. Sarah, appreciate you and your membership. Really do. Thanks for hanging out, Sarah. Appreciate, I don't know how to say this, but appreciate you. DJ Dubs, I know how to say that. Great show, John. Hit the like button. Yes, please, if you wouldn't mind subscribing. But I haven't even gotten to a title sponsor. What am I doing, man? It's been one of those days. If you guys wouldn't mind sticking around to hear me talk about my good friend, Eric Lanier at Higher Impact Financial. Seriously, if you have any financial needs, if you want to set up a 15-minute consultation for free with someone that can help you with your financial future, please do that by clicking the link down below and getting in contact with Eric Lanier at Higher Impact Financial. I've done this in the last couple of weeks. Set up a 15-minute call with Eric, then had an hour-long sit down with him, and he has really taken some of the questions that I've had about my financial future for myself, my wife, and my child, and made it pretty simplistic, to be honest. And you're probably thinking about your retirement. I mean, I'm kind of in the middle of my career, but you're always thinking about what are you going to do, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Let Eric Lanier at Higher Impact Financial help you. He is based in Southern California. He's a huge Aztec fan. He's a huge supporter of my work. If you got any financial needs, questions about taxes, retirement, your future, short-term, medium-term, long-term, please get in contact with Eric Lanier at Higher Impact Financial. He's a supporter of the channel. He's our title sponsor. Click that link in the description down below. Set up a 15-minute free consultation and tell him that we sent you to him here on the wrap-up show. The one thing I would say, and I know I've been trying to end this even though I can't, the one thing I would say to Sarah says, I don't want Salt Lake for personal reasons, but I'm going to be paying more attention to the opponent. The one thing I'd say about Salt Lake is elevation. I mean, you love it because it's a quick flight, and you know San Diego State plays at elevation each and every year, but it's also at elevation. And like the Aztecs have had issues before at elevation, like most teams that are sea level teams. And also I'm thinking about Jaden Ledee, like you want to maximize Ledee, and at elevation, you typically play players shorter stints. So if he's going to play, let's say 36 minutes at sea level, is he going to play 32 minutes at elevation? And not having Ledee on the floor for 4 minutes can be the difference between winning and losing. So that's my one thought on Salt Lake. I think otherwise it makes a lot of sense. Easy to get to. Aztecs play games in Utah all the time. They play games in elevation all the time. But like, I think it would be unfair if, you win a game and then all of a sudden you're playing BYU in Salt Lake, like at elevation. Not only are they, like, let's say you're the 4 and they're the 5 and they play at elevation and you have to play them at elevation. But again, that's the luck of the draw. That's the luck of the draw sometimes in the NCAA tournament. So we'll see how it plays out. It's not worth getting enamored over, considering we don't know, 13 days out, what's going to happen between now and then. Larry Joe, appreciate you, my friend. Really do. And Kevin, appreciate you as well. Again, if you're here live or on replay, please subscribe. Year-on content for Aztec fans, for Mountain West fans. Smash the like button for me. You can follow me on Twitter at John Schaefer. Appreciate your super chats. If you're here on replay, thank you for the super thanks as well. I appreciate those of you that have become members as well. All Day Ed, thank you. Fiend, I'm with you, man. Best time of the year. Appreciate you guys. Until next time, join us on the radio tomorrow. We'll get you ready, 3 p.m. I've got John Fanta on John and Jim tomorrow at 3:30. Great college hoops voice. He'll join us at 3:30. Jeff Smith, Mesa Foundation at 4:30. I'll try to get Mark Ziegler on at some point this week. So we're getting you ready for tomorrow night, beginning at 3 p.m. on San Diego Sports 760 and John and Jim. All right, my name's John Schaefer, and you've been watching the wrap-up show presented by my friend Eric Lanier at Higher Impact Financial. Thanks, guys.